In the Supreme Court of Judicature of Jamaica in the Civil Division, we have the claim number. Between Delsha and Marie Hyman Hall, claimant, and Noel Carl Hall, defendant. So here we have Mrs. Hyman Hall had filed for divorce from her husband, Mr. Noel Hall. In chambers, Joseph Jarrett, instructed by Joseph Jarrett and Company for the claimant. So Mrs. Hall's lawyer is Joseph Jarrett. And Judith Cooper, bachelor, instructed by Chambers, Bunny, and Steer for the defendant. So Mr. Hall's lawyer is Judith Cooper, bachelor. It was heard on December 13, 2021 and February 10th, 2022. Matrimonial home vacation of equal share rule. So the equal share rule basically states that upon the solution of cohabitation or divorce, the family home is to be, the interest in the family home is to be split 50-50 between both spouses. Now, there's an application for the variation of that rule here. It's by Mr. Hall. We'll see how it goes. Section 6, 7, and 13 of the Property Rights of Spouses Act. And there's the Maintenance Act. So it seems as if Mrs. Hall applied for maintenance. The maintenance of spouses and maintenance of child of the family, Section 5, 6, and 14 of the Maintenance Act. On the 13th day of 2020, the claimant, Mrs. Hall, filed a fixed date claim form which was amended on the 6th day of May 2021. It sought the following orders. 1. A declaration that apartment number 11D, 8 Ocean Boulevard, is the matrimonial home / family home for the purposes of the division of property under the Property Rights of Spouses Act. 2. A declaration that the claimant, Mrs. Hall, is entitled to 50% share of the matrimonial / family home located at apartment 11D, 8 Ocean Boulevard in the parish of Kingston, or such reasonable percentage deemed reasonable by the court. 3. An order that upon the determination of the interest of the parties in the aforesaid property, the property be valued by T.D. Alexandria Company Realty Limited. 4. An order that the defendant be given the first option if he so desires to purchase, that is Mr. Hall be given the first option if he so desires to purchase Mrs. Hall's share or interest in the above mentioned property. That means if the property is valued $10 million and would have been split $5 million for Mrs. Hall, $5 million for Mr. Hall, Mr. Hall has the option of giving $5 million, that's half the property's value, to Mrs. Hall and keeping the property. 5. If the defendant, Mr. Hall, fails to exercise his options within 21 days of receipt of the valuation report, the property is to be sold by public auction or private treaty. 6. A declaration that Mr. Hall is liable to pay maintenance to the claimant, Mrs. Hall, and the relevant child of the marriage by way of monthly payment or a lump sum to be assessed by the court or agreed to by the parties. 7. An order that Mr. Hall pay the assessed or agreed monthly payment or lump sum from a date to the fixed to be, well, it should be to be fixed. It says to be fixed by the court. 8. An order that the Register of the Supreme Court be empowered to execute all documents necessary to effect a sale and transfer of the family/matrimonial home in the event that Mr. Hall fails or neglects to do so. 9. That all costs incidental to the sale of the property, including but not limited to the participation of a valuation report for the property, the payment of transfer tax, stamp duty, carriage of sale, registration, and attorney's fees, be borne by Mr. Hall and Mrs. Hall equally. 10. That Joseph Jarrett and Company, attorneys at law, shall have the carriage of sale. So those are Mrs. Hall's application. We will next look at the claimant's case, that is Mrs. Hall's case.